Welcome to Cash Talk, the podcast where we delve into the depths of finance, business, and life itself. I'm your host, John Cachia, a multi-award-winning wealth advisor with a passion for empowering ambitious Australians to confidently achieve financial freedom. Hey everyone, before we get started, this is a quick reminder that everything in this podcast is of a general nature and nothing has been tailored to your personal circumstances. So please seek personal financial advice before acting on this information. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Cash Talk. And today I'm absolutely blessed to be side by side with some amazing people. Both of them have been guests on Cash Talk. Simi, Rayat, a well-renowned psychologist and someone who I really love working with because we share a passion in regards to a lot of areas. And also Mark Colletti, who was on recently with me as well too, have a great friendship with this guy. And he has a wealth of knowledge in regards to, you know, the psychotherapy around or psychotherapy techniques in regards to helping you with past traumas, but also being able for you to navigate through life. And thank you very much, Mark and Simi, for joining me today again.
Nice to be here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, today, guys, we're going to be talking about rewiring your money mindset. And to be honest with you, that is a big topic. So, you know, we're going to try and get through as much as we can get through today, but I see finances being so influenced by people's behaviors and people's habits and also by their psychology as well too. And so, you know, I'm going to use the wealth of knowledge from a psychotherapist and from a psychologist and from a financial advisor to try and unpack all of these different areas and give you some golden nuggets to think about in this podcast. So, Simi, I might speak from yourself. You know, being a psychologist for many years, did you find a lot of people coming to you with financial stresses? How did they feel about their finances? Did it impact their life? Speak to me about that and the influence of finances and their psychology.
Yeah, look, I think finances are always on people's mind. They drive so much of our decisions, behaviours, our lifestyle options. And, you know, finances are linked to survival instinct. So it's a primary need for humans to be able to live the life that they need and want. So a lot of things I would hear would be, you know, stress and pressure around not having enough finances, worrying about managing how to pay bills, stay on top of those, especially working with business owners in terms of cash flow. You know, that regularity of cash flow and the worry and the concern of making sure that every month, every quarter, they're going to be able to bring in enough and pay their teams.
And you work with some really successful people, obviously, in your leadership kind of coaching space. I find that as people become more financially successful, their worries change. Yeah, and it becomes, from my perspective, around I've built wealth, but now I don't want to lose it. So it goes from this kind of scarcity mindset as in like I need to have enough and the financial stress to I now have all of this money, and they become a little bit like hoarders in regards to their money and that balance between having enough for today and that. So there's this psychology around, do I have the license to spend what I've created? And then is anyone going to get my money? Do you see that as well from these successful people a little bit?
At times I do, but more than that, what I see is that people will, you know, create that wealth for themselves and they might not know how they've done it, in the sense that they've done it, but their mindset's still around the wealth and how to create more of it or how to enjoy it. Hasn't shifted.
Yeah, so there's this obsession to create money and they haven't smelt the roses.
Yeah,
okay.
So they keep going. It's like chasing, but not being able to really enjoy that because their mindset around the money hasn't shifted.
And Mark, what about yourself? Obviously, you know, you've worked with people with kind of traumatic scenarios and that kind of re-emphasizes this even more. And, you know, I kind of look at the big kind of, maybe not traumatic as such as like, for example, say someone dies, they inherit $20 million, they inherit $10 million. Like that is a whole mindset shift. Obviously hearing from what Simi said and what I've said, do you see people, their mindset having an influence on their finances and especially in these traumatic scenarios?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic as well because there is something to be said about what happens when we've come from a scarce environment, right? So we're thinking of scarcity, and sometimes the creative adjustment that can happen is we know we have to fend for ourselves. We can only fend for ourselves if, say, mother, father, someone's not present, we're not getting our emotional needs met elsewhere. Then that scarcity mindset is, well, I can only provide for myself, and so then our internal and external supports are not present. And so if we are constantly having to fend for ourselves over time, what can happen is exactly what you guys are talking about, right? Which is this sense of, I don't know how I got here, but I know I've done it through self-supporting. So if I reach out to others, I might be burnt. I might not, gain a capacity to grow my wealth or gain a capacity to build my support networks around me. And so I think, yes, spot on. There's this sense of, I guess, not knowing who to trust, but essentially how to trust. That's probably an initial one. And there's this beautiful kind of Dostoevsky story that speaks about this, right? Where you have a father and son who are looking for a new life. And so they give all of their money to this priest in Mongolia, right? And what they do is the priest says you can have as much land as you would like, but you have to come back by sunset. And so they take all these poles and flags and they start 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters. And the father looks up and he's like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. We have a paddock now for a farm. And so they find the paddock for the farm and the son looks up and says, hey, the sun's getting a bit down. If we don't come back, we're going to lose everything. No, we're okay. So then they find a paddock and they're like, we could put animals here. So now we've got farm, we've got animals. Fantastic. Maybe we should head back. But just as the sun is getting a little bit lower, we can see where this is going. They see a river, and he's like, "Well, now we don't need water for the farm, and we don't need water for the agriculture, right?" Eventually, the son says, "Hey, if we don't get back in time, we're going to lose everything." They don't get back in time, right? And there's this kind of key note when I'm speaking to my clients, even when I'm consulting or when I'm doing the trauma work, which is we always need to remember to come back by sunset.
Okay.
Right? And so it's this idea of knowing, how far to push the limit, but where our boundary lies. And if we haven't had the appropriate people around us to support us in knowing that, it makes it really difficult.
So do you find that happens often?
Yeah, I think if we're speaking specifically around trauma, I mean, we're only as limited as our experiences have indicated, right?
So when we talk about trauma, some people might think it's a huge event. A person dies or whatever. Trauma can be generational, and it can also be the accumulation of small thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, and even, I guess, more, yeah.
Accumulation of thinking, I should say.
Yeah, and even more specific, because I think trauma's become like a really huge buzzword as well in pop psych. I think the way I like to define it is you could have two exact same situations that have happened to two people. One situation has been supported through care, love. The other one has gone unsupported. They're equally as traumatic, right? But actually, the trauma comes from the lack of support in the environment. So the person who has felt the support in the environment, both internal and external, they should most likely come out of it unscathed. But for the person who hasn't, what happens is we create this needed and repeated experience in life then. So we've had this big thing that's happened, it's been unsupported, and then we start looking for a way out, making bad choices, trying to complete this cycle.
How many people do you think honestly look at the psychology and behaviour first before they look at their finances?
I think it's really rare. I do. I think it's really rare. Because you know what? The psychology is the deeper stuff. Yeah? And if we look at the psychology of money, it's such a big topic that we need to really get our heads round. Well, it's an important topic rather than big, because all money decisions are based on emotion. And 92% of our decisions, even the most big, important decisions we make in life, buying a house, the type of wedding that we want to have, all these big decisions, they are driven by emotions. We think that they're driven by logic and rationale, but actually they're driven by emotions. And our emotions are very, very closely linked to our previous experiences of childhood, the things that we've seen as we've grown up, our parents' views and beliefs and their behaviours around money. It shapes our beliefs. And those beliefs are really strong and they form and influence the fear.
And so that's great, because I think that this is so much around like what I see. Yeah, I see so many people focusing on the end solution to them, which is which super fund do I have, which investment do I have, and you can have the worst behaviors and the worst psychology. It doesn't care if you get you could hit pot luck on a great super fund or a great investment, but if you have the bad behaviors and the bad psychology, as quick as you made it, you lost it. And so the other thing as well too is we're all parents here. You set the right example from a behavioural perspective, from a psychological perspective. That impact that you have on your children creates that money to be then passed down to them with the right behaviours and psychology. So the greatest thing that we can do for our children is fix our behaviours and then teach them. You know, it's the old saying that Bruce Lee said, don't give your kids what you didn't have, teach them what you didn't know. Yeah. So I see this all the time. I see people making decisions based on emotions, not based on logic. We want to be making that of logic, not based on emotion. But from a psychological perspective, and we're talking about the actual biology of a human, Simi, we've spoken about like there's two ways of thinking, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there's
system 1, system 2. So Daniel Kahneman's work around, the decision making and our how we make decisions. He wrote the fantastic book Thinking Fast and Slow, and in there he talks about system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is what I just shared, that really kind of fast, emotive, instinctive thinking. We don't actually know that that's going on, but pretty much that's what's going on in our mind all the time.
So if I'm going to go pick sorry to interrupt, but if I'm going to make this very simple for me, I go into my wardrobe and I'm going to pick what I'm going to wear for the day. Is that system 1 or system 2?
Initially, you'll be driven by system 1.
Okay.
Because you'd probably be drawn to a certain top or a certain colour. But system 2 thinking is the more conscious, the intentional thinking. You're probably thinking about what you've got on that day, who you've got to go and see, and then you'll make more of a conscious decision about what outfit you choose to wear.
And so in the finance world, if I'm going to go, say, buy a house, am I initially thinking system 1, which is it's pretty, it's nice? How does that work from a person not in psychology?
So the underlying thought process will be system 1 thinking.
Okay.
System 2 thinking needs to be activated. And we want to, when we're making big decisions, we really want to be thinking logically and rationally, look at the data, really be measured and weigh up the pros and cons. So we need to put systems in place to bypass that system 1 thinking. Because, we've been in situations where the numbers could be telling us one thing and then inside like, oh, but I really want that. That would be amazing. And we're in this kind of conflict. So we need to watch ourselves when our thinking is overdriven by that system 1 thinking, catch ourselves in it and try and reactivate system 2 thinking.
And so would you say that the people that are mainly thinking in system 1 are the ones who are making the mistakes?
Well, I think because we're on autopilot mode, we are not taking control, like active control. We're not making intentional decisions.
And they're emotionally driven?
And they, more often than not, are emotionally driven.
And would you say that then from like a support group, trauma, the people you hang around, that's influencing system 1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, I'm just going to frame this in a way that kind of makes sense. So our neural pathways in our brains are functioning based on previous experiences. And Peter Levine and Stephen Porges speak about this a lot, right? And Stephen Porges had just written a paper about this kind of particular part of the brain that gets wired for your own vulnerability. So to sense threat, but also to sense threat creates safety, because over time when we get so used to a certain type of threat, we lean into it because it's the threat that we know as opposed to the threat we don't know.
It makes us feel comfortable because we know it. And it's essentially that is what our brain is designed to do. It really dislikes ambiguity. It wants to feel safe and be safe and stay in what we know. And that's why those habits just keep repeating themselves again and again.
So it's very interesting, especially in 2024, where there's a lot of people that are financially struggling. There's a lot of people doing really well. But let's talk about the people that are financially struggling, and hopefully we can give them some nuggets. Like they look at their pathway and they don't like what they see. But they're also in the same grain scared of changing. So they're choosing the pathway of pain, not the other pathway of effort to success. Why do you think that is happening? Because we have many people that kind of nibble at the cheese, yeah? Oh, I might want to start working, but then you say you have to change ultimately and they're not willing to change. It's like, I want a six-pack, but I'm not willing to do the effort.
Yeah, and I see this a lot in my, obviously, as you can imagine, my direct clinical work is that in that pain, there is safety. And in that pain, there is continuity. And so there's something kind of in the psychoanalytics world where we call it like tolerating the intolerable self, right? And that's really the work that we need to do. And that's, whether it's with a clinician, whether it's with, a support system, whatever that is we need to learn that the intolerable self is far more tolerable than we think it is. And that, this idea that if you keep a monster, in the closet, in the dark, over and over and over again, and you never look at it, that monster's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you'll move rooms, and then you'll be living in the kitchen, and then you'll be living outside of your house, and then all of a sudden that monster's huge. When you can start shedding a little bit of light on it and taking a peek that we're actually not as bad as we think we are, that's when that real change can happen. And that's that kind of movement of the feeling, the sensation to awareness. And awareness of self is where we can exact change and start rebuilding the neural pathways around, I've been doing this Sisyphus in the rock, rolling the rock uphill, never getting it to the other end for 10 years now. Maybe I could start trying this little thing around seeking support. Maybe talking to John about, all right, I need a little bit of help. I don't know how to do it. I'm terrified of it. That is a fantastic first step to make change because we're acknowledging the fear, right? And then we could start building from there, slowing down. Yeah.
See, it's interesting because when people come to work with us, they think that there's this dramatic change. Like both in psychology and psychotherapy, it's not about just grabbing someone that's coming in, and thinking a particular way and then changing them in one day. That change takes time.
Yeah.
So we all know that it's like this 1% better each day. So that in 5 years from now, they're in a much better scenario. And when it comes to psychology and when it comes to behaviours and habits, that's what it's all about. It's not flick the switch and you're changing. However, what really concerns me is that person that's struggling, not willing to make that change, the monster is just getting bigger and bigger. So, because I don't think that way, it frightens the freaking hell out of me, that I can keep going down a pathway where I know I'm going to fall off the edge.
Yeah.
Even if the mountain is that high, I know I'm not going to fall off the edge. There's safety somewhere there. That, even though it's steep and even though I'm going to hate it, falling off the edge is worse than that. So my question is, I don't think they're seeing the edge. How do you support that?
Yeah, and look, everyone's different, and the thing is that safety for some people is their primary driver because of the experiences that they've been through. They are going to hold on to that feeling safe with their dear life. Is it helpful for them? Is it going to get them the growth that they really want? No, it's not. And we know that to get to that other end of that growth, we've got to push out of the uncomfortableness. And we're holding on to those feelings and we're holding on to those behaviours because it's keeping us safe from those negative feelings.
But
avoidance.
Yeah, I get that. But when you then look at some of the damning stats in regards to financial stress, and then you look at some of the suicide rates that are linked to finances and stuff, I'm talking about a cliff that is chronic depression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anxiety, like the flow-on effects that happens to your actual well-being.
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about like the financial standing of that person. Like in Australia, we have enough support from like Centrelink and stuff like that the edge is not that bad in financial. I'm more talking about like life. Person walks in. I had a client prospective client, I should rephrase, yesterday. 55 years of age, $3.6 million in debt, $1 million debt of it is an ATO debt, and $900,000 is off a loan on their parents' place. Yeah, they're coming to me on the edge.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, the easiest thing is we're very, very fortunate that your assets right now just are more than your debt position. Literally, they don't have the cash flow to survive. Sell everything, draw a line in the sand, and start again. It is the much easiest way because the cash flow, you could just imagine that level of debt, the amount of cash flow that's coming to support that debt. They don't earn enough to be able to do that. Not going to get into the particulars, but literally there's more going out than going in. I'm looking at the woman. The woman is stressed to the eyeballs. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's panicking. The man is optimistic and he's been the one funding all the debt. Yeah. Like that, I'm looking at that going like, you are right on the edge. If you came to me 10 years before, like that's fueled. Like it doesn't happen overnight. You fuel a lifestyle. The car they got is worth 300 grand. So we can talk about it a whole nother day about externalization. But that's what I am seeing more often than not.
Yeah.
And this is not because they've got C-Bus Super and Australian Super. This is the behaviours and the habits and the psychology. And then the stats are saying that this is happening. I think it's like 70-something% of people are feeling financial stress right now. You look at some of the bank accounts, like in the stats in regards to these banks, like a couple of $1,000s that people have in a bank account. Like if you took an Australian average of an income of $80,000, that's like they're literally 70% feel like whatever the stat is, like it's a high percentage. Most people are literally living week by week.
And, you know, being so stretched in that way, yes, it's going to put that financial stress on you. And if we think about where does that come from, a lot of people want to stretch themselves in that way because money really is associated with our identity, our self-worth, how others perceive us, social comparison. And, you know, we can often fall into that trap that we've got to keep wanting more or spending more, or accumulating more. And I think being really real with what your finances actually are, and having, you know, someone like yourself, John, that can really sit down and actually get you to understand your finances. A lot of people don't even look at their finances, John, because it creates so much fear to even look at their, you know, financial statements.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, so you got to think about the road they're looking is it is so bad, let's kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like literally I see the cliff. And like when those people, I said like, okay, the easiest thing for us to do is just sell everything and start again. Woman's like freaking out. She's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, no, you can do that. Yeah. Explain to me why you don't want that. Oh, well, then we have to get rid of our house. We have to do our this. Like, you're going to get to bankruptcy. Your retirement vision and you're going to be completely, like that is more daunting than selling a house and starting again. And that's me. Yeah. I know that is me, but I'm talking about that's what she's thinking is the majority of what I see.
And what that is in a way, again, from that history, from that trauma background, or whatever's happening there, is we're reinforcing a pattern because it's a pattern that we feel safe with. So it's like, I've got to double down. I need to expend resources. I need to do whatever I need to do to maintain what's happening for me, because the alternative thinking is unknown, right? So even this idea, you know, it sounds simple, but it's not, right? Because it's like you have to sell everything.
It's unknown.
You have to, you know, everything that you know right now will be gone. But there's an end. You will probably stop yourself from reaching the cliff, which is hugely important, because what that cliff means is exactly that. I don't know, chronic depression, potential for suicidal ideation, whatever happens.
Yes,
right?
correct. Stress on the relationship. You got to talk about kids. Like there is so much that impacts that we all know here. Yeah. And it's just like, don't get me wrong. I didn't say to them like, guys, it's like, you know, we have to do this like right now. I said, but this is where we need to walk towards. I need to show them the cliff, show them the mountain, and say, hey, listen, you're off course. That's the way we need to go. And they're freaking out from what they're seeing.
There's also there's a bias, you know, called the sunk cost bias that a lot of us will face as well. I call it the sulk cost bias, because essentially is that, you know, imagine you are, you know, you've paid for a movie ticket, you've gone to watch film, and you sat there and you're thinking, oh my God, this is such a waste of time. It's such a bad film, but you still stay in it and you watch it because you've paid for that ticket.
Right.
And this is, you know, similar in the sense that we keep going because there's a little bit of hope that things are going to get better. There's also that feeling of we've already invested. We're not going to lose
amount
it
of
now.
dollars. I've put stamp duty towards this. I bought a deposit. Yeah, I get it.
We've
We're
got
gonna
into
keep
here.
going.
Yeah.
We've got to see it through. So, you know, it's not always as simple as, you know, we can know that the other side is not going to look great, but the change needs to we need to feel it emotionally, and it needs to make sense logically.
Total separate side, but always related as well too. Why don't you think people like getting advice?
Around money?
People don't talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
I talk about it because I talk about it all the time. But
Yeah.
honestly, if you went to like a birthday, not many people bring up the financial topic. Yeah, it's a bit of a taboo, like the whole politics and religion
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah.
But also coupled with that is I don't think out of a percentage, and I've got the stats somewhere, but all the stats I see is that most people get their advice from the closest people to them, which is mum, dad, brother, sister, close friend. Now, I know why most people don't go and see specialists like you guys. Yeah, there's the ego, there's the whole like, I'll be right.
I don't need help.
Yeah, I don't need help.
Do it myself.
Psychologists are because if you're cuckoo, I'm not cuckoo. Yeah. And so when it comes to financial advice, like, why don't you think people actively seek it? What are your thoughts in regards to that?
I kind of touched on this the last time we were together, but it's probably important to flesh out because I think there's a cultural thing that I'm seeing a lot happen now, right? So we have become such an individualized society that we strive by ourselves, we create by ourselves, we finance by ourselves, and we don't outsource, we don't resource, right? And I think in other cultures they're doing it really differently, and because there's this sense of community and practice together around a higher goal that's just self, right? Again, back to the reference of the tall poppy syndrome. Like, I've noticed that moving from Canada to Australia, the tall poppy syndrome is far more present in Australia than any other country that I've lived in.
And do you see that you're from the UK? Do you see that
I've
as
seen that here
Have
as
you?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of, if I share my successes in a desire to get some support, I may get shut down. So there's a vulnerability there that
Yeah.
we maybe don't want to throw out. And then that individuation as well around, I have to do it myself and there is no support around me. And so people, if you think genetically over decades, generations, I mean, if you think about how Australia was built,
Yeah, I know.
there's a lot of hardworking people with very little support, right? So I think that gets kind of genetically built into the DNA as well in Australians.
Do you think that the power of information has also influenced their need for seeking advice? Like, you've got ChatGPT where people are putting in, this is my financial plan, make a plan for me. Hey, listen, this is the financial product I need. Should I do a comparison? Even when Google, Google search engines, social media, TikTok influencers, Instagram influencers, this whole information world, like, I know how detrimental it can be from a medical perspective. I think there's this one where I don't need advice because I can access the source of information.
And I don't think it is, we know it's not about just having the information.
Yeah.
It's about really having a trusted partner that gets what you're trying to achieve, that understands you and your goals and your needs, and you can be really open and honest with your financial advisor of where things are at for you and how you feel. It's not just the thoughts, but how you feel as well. And I think it comes back to the trust. So when we have that trusted relationship, we feel safe. When we feel safe, we're more likely to talk about topics and things that are really close to our heart. And finances, for most people, are a topic that is close to our heart, that we feel that we're not going to really share openly with people until we really have their trust. And we know they've got a vested interest at heart as well.
So it's very interesting because on like the trust index, financial advisors are pretty poorly rated. Okay, and there's been a lot of things that have happened in the past. Not financial advisors now are in a much better state than where they were years ago. And I can say that Thriving Wealth is epic in regards to clients, referring clients. Like, the community we have is absolutely amazing, and both of you know firsthand what that experience kind of looks like. There's people that are close to all of us that have been with us for a long time and absolute advocates for what we do. So this is not coming from a position, I think, of like the people that are coming to see us. It's more about, as a generalization, I don't need financial advice because I know how to do it myself. I don't see a psychologist because I don't need, this is what I'm hearing right now, I don't need them. Now, I have known a lot of people that have started psychology, for example, and you'd have it in psychotherapy as well. They do 2-3 sessions and then you won't see them again. So this is what I'm seeing in financial advice as well. As a generalization, they're getting bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
They're taking nibbles and then they're going off, they're researching it. And I kind of say, like, with the majority of people going off the cliff, if you're taking bite-sized pieces, that doesn't influence then that cliff. You might just start to move in a different direction, but you're still going off the cliff. So the reason why I'm kind of relating this right now is because a lot of people will be listening to this podcast. A lot of people will be watching this podcast thinking to myself, like, I could do this myself. I'm consuming all of this information. However, I will argue if we're using system 1, we're making emotional decisions. We've got traumas that are coming from our past, our parents, even us individually. Even if you have ChatGPT with the greatest formulas out there, you can't fight the psychology.
Yeah.
You can't fight the influences, can we? All these biases and all this psychology, how can it type into Google, type into ChatGPT? Because you're actually the person typing that in. I hate to say it's you're the problem, not the information you're getting.
There's something so interesting about this, right? And you speak about kind of the person who comes to you and after 3 sessions, you don't hear from them again. That happens. I would like to think 98% of the time it doesn't, but every once in a while you get the one client and you could see the core organizing themes. You could see what's going on. And after 1 or 2 sessions, it's like, whoa, too much. Like not ready to face what's going on here. And so I think a lot of that can be that fear base around if I step into this, everything that I've built up for myself, my identity, my sense of self, where I come from, might have to fall away a little bit. And this is the key, if there's not enough support systems in place to hold us when we fall, that's when we would rather run for the hills.
I had a guy that I was speaking to that said to me, we had a couple of psychology sessions, and it was exactly this. He goes, the sessions were amazing. The person asked me these questions. It gave me the realization of why I am who I am. But in the same sentence, but I'm no longer going to see that person anymore. This is what I'm talking about. So I know I've used a couple of sessions. What I'm saying is like, where is this DIY coming in from? Yeah. But even for medical, I'm not saying finance is one, medical's the same.
Yeah. Look, I think it's to do with commitment in the sense of, how committed are we to make a change? How committed are we to see a difference and to see it through? Because we know that it's going to take effort. When you work with a specialist, you've got somebody who is your accountability buddy, who's going to really ensure that you stay on track. And, as we know, life gets in the way. We get in the way ourselves. So there's so many things that are going to take us off track. So I think when you found a good advisor, a professional that you connect with that gets you, that's where the real magic can happen because you can stay on course, you can stay on track.
Could I just add to that also we need to really shift the way medical professionals and financial advisors are also seen, because there tends to have been, over the last 20, 30 years, a paternalistic kind of environment that happens.
Yeah.
When someone goes to see a psychologist, they feel like they get locked in for 10 sessions. They don't particularly like their psychologist, not get anything from them. And that's that one bad experience that they need for them to never see another psychologist again, right? Or another financial advisor again, where they felt like they've been hamstrung, there wasn't a relationship. And so therapists, financial advisors need to take more accountability of what they're doing and how they're giving what they're giving to their client, and say, hey, you know what, after 5 sessions, and it's happened for me before where I've seen someone for 1 or 2 sessions, and I'm like, you know what, I don't think I'm actually going to be the right person for you, but I've got someone who will be, and that gives them a beautiful experience of relationship, and that's that trust and support network that needs to happen. And that's like why we moved to you guys, right? Where we were like, there was fear around my partner around doing this. There was excitement around me, but there was safety. And when that safety gets established and honesty, it was like, okay, I'm willing to relinquish a bit of myself to these guys and let them hold me.
And that was something inside our business that we needed to get very good at.
Yeah.
The ability to say no when you needed to say no. And what I'm talking about, I'm not just putting this on the premise of society and saying this is a society problem. This is a professional problem as well. Financial advisors, therapists, whatever. When you're running a business, it's like, get everyone in. But are you actually adding value? Are you going to make change? we have literally 3 meetings with our clients that is like, are we the right fit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then between us, I know in like the elite financial advisors, I've got like other advisors that I refer to and they refer to us because they're a specialist in that particular area. And so I agree there's a big cohort that are like, let's just get them in, let's get sessions out there. Yeah.
Correct.
So I do agree with that,
Yeah.
which is not right.
Yeah.
So it's not just a society thing. However, I'm going back to the whole information world. I'm concerned, especially with AI and the way that it's heading. It's like this behavioural changes and these habitable changes. You talked about an accountability partner before. AI is not going to give you that. It's going to tell you the difference between C-Bus and Australian Super and which one it is from a savings perspective. But that is the small fry than what we're talking about right now. Yeah.
And I think also, you know, when you're speaking with your advisor and, you know, you get asked the really good questions of what is this going to mean for you? Like, you know, what difference is it really going to make? Those kind of questions really help to get at the heart of why you're doing what you're doing and the choices that you're making. And I think that, you know, with AI, yes, you'll get that just to a certain level, but it's not really a piecemeal approach. When you're looking at your finances and you're looking at lifestyle, you've got to have a look at a really complete holistic view and also have a look at the emotional, the logical needs. All of those things have got to come into play. And that's where I think the trusted relationship is just at the heart. It's completely at the core of what you're doing, what we all offer in our own businesses. When you have that trust, you know, logically what you say makes sense. It connects with people. People feel that you're real and you're authentic, like they're getting the real John that deeply cares. And then they also are getting this real empathy that they know and they feel that you deeply care about them and their situation and what's important to them. When you get those 3 things like really well balanced, you actually get real heartfelt trust.
100%. Simi, we've spent a lot of time with our organisation really deeping into like the way we even ask questions, the way we do things. We've got even to the point of like, you know, the way we dress, the way we talk, like literally absolutely everything. And I kind of think about like the obsession in regards to how obsessed I am with building that trust to get the right answers to the right questions. Yeah. Like even just when I think about like ChatGPT and just putting a prompt in like what's the best superannuation fund, like that is so insignificant, the prompt that they're even putting in. And so I'm really concerned of a DIY world because I'm seeing a DIY world increasing and I'm seeing financial stress increasing as well. The correlation is not moving the other way.
I just couldn't agree more because there's, you know, let's go back to individuation, right? The more we individualize, the more we have to self-sustain, the more we live in a world where support and trust isn't available, right? And so the key in this, whether it's any relationship, we need to be in relationship to thrive. That's just a simple statement of facts.
Yeah.
And you see people with the highest mental health issues, the ones who are struggling the most are the ones with less relationships, less trusting, caring people in their lives, less support network.
Those positive relationships, the meaningful relationships. And the psychology research shows it that, you know, for us to thrive, we need to have a certain number of meaningful, positive interactions and relationships on a daily basis. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to get brownie points for dropping thrive as well too. But what I was going to say, my last passing comments before we start wrapping things up is from both of you, what's maybe 1 or 2 things that you think you can pass on to the people that are watching and listening to try and improve their relationship with money? What would you think? And I'm going to let you think about it, but...
So a good friend of mine, Ellen Rogan, based in the US, works with a lot of financial advisors. She says that money and you are a thing. And I really like that because, when someone's in a relationship and you say, oh, you know, they're a bit of a thing now. That's the thing. We are, money and us are a relationship. We're a thing. But if we're not going to pay attention to that relationship, really understand what's working well, what some of the barriers are, what some of the things that really annoy us, we're not going to understand our behaviours around that relationship. and that relationship is not going to get any better. It's going to stay as is, or it's going to deteriorate. So my recommendation would be for anyone that's listening and watching is just start to be really open to question and get to know what your relationship is like with money. We all have a relationship with money. Start asking yourself the questions of, when do you feel really good about money? When has money brought you joy? When has money, brought sad times for you, or has not been, a positive aspect of your life? What are the things that really you value about having money as well? What would happen if, for example, you had everything else in life, but 10% of your wealth was gone? Just these kind of questions. Start asking yourself these questions so you start to really understand what is your relationship with money. I think the more that we understand that, the more we can actually take some steps, really healthy, proactive steps, really simple steps to strengthen that relationship and make it into a relationship that we're really proud of, that we want to have a dance with money. We see money and us being a thing, and it brings us a lot of joy.
Definitely. There's good ones, and there's a whole relationship with money where people don't look at it, they think it's evil, whatnot.
Yeah.
And if you can start improving on that and knowing that money can bring you joy, it can bring you happiness, you can then start improving on that. Great tips. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I think there's this, again, back to this idea that anxiety is excitement without support. And so what do I need to do to both bolster my internal and external supports? The other thing is resilience. We are far more resilient than we think we are. Yeah. And so we often stand at that edge for fear of change, only because it's what we've known, and trust that actually holding that space, that we can reach the edge and be okay, that we can come back and ask for help and ask for support. So we need to start having the mindset that it's not just you. It's not just you in this, that you can start drawing supports around you. And if you don't have those supports around you, start looking for them. And if those supports aren't good enough, fire them.
Yeah.
And that's like, as I always say, like, fire your therapist, fire whoever it is, because if you're not getting what you want from them, they're the wrong person for you.
Definitely. And I think that actually really works well because, like, you're bringing that awareness in regards to the relationship of money. And then once you've got that awareness, well, the change in the support group as well too. And I think from my perspective is, regardless of if you are in a bit of a rut or if you're doing what you think is really well, there's always ways that you can improve your relationship with money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we've talked about it all before around, bringing joy. And one of the biggest things that, I've wanted to do with every single client we've worked with is around bringing them more fulfillment. Yeah. Because I have amazing plans that can put many zeros on people's bank accounts. Yeah. But if that's all they're obsessed with, the zeros in their bank accounts, that relationship with money becomes very, very toxic.
I agree.
We can always work on things, and it's not just the accumulation of money, it's how we use it to point to things that really make us fulfilled.
Come back by sunset, right?
Absolutely.
Get back by sunset. I think that's the key. Yeah.
Definitely.
Love that.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for jumping on. That was absolutely amazing. I reckon I could do this forever. But hopefully you have been enjoying these podcasts as well too. So if you're liking these, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also to our podcast. We are on most major channels like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and whatnot. And be sure to send it to your friends and family as well too, so we can help improve financial literacy for all Australians. Keep well. Thanks.